BC Legends celebrates those in our community who have made a difference. Wendy Lisogar-Cocchia and Sergio Cocchia have done just that. Not only have they run a very successful hotel and spa business, but they are widely recognized and honored for their philanthropic work with children and families coping with autism. For our conversation, we met at the center their foundation has built. So Wendy and Sergio and Wendy, everybody sees you as a pair, not just in marriage, but of course in business, and also with your philanthropy. How did you two meet?
At work, at the hotel, and it wasn't allowed actually to date, my dad's rules. And we actually worked together and were best friends for 2 years before we started dating.
And you were the night manager at that time?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked her first because I like to hear what she says so I can make sure I fall in line. So, yeah, I was working at the hotel after I moved here to Vancouver in 86 and started at the hotel and was a night manager at the time that we started dating.
Sergio, from the beginning, was that your plan? I want to be a hotelier?
Didn't know what I wanted to do, but fell into the hotel and love it. It's a wonderful career. You make people happy. It's a beautiful line of work.
You were actually on your way to law school at UVic, and that's where you always joke around your life. So my dad had a stroke, a very bad stroke, and I was 22 years old. And unfortunately, he didn't recover very well, and so I wound up running the hotel at a very young age. And of course, this was this amazing, super smart, ethical night manager, and so I leaned on Serge very heavily.
And of course, you grew up in the hotel business. I bet you know how to do every job in the hotel.
Well, I was very fortunate because I had just finished university at UBC myself, but I literally had done every single job in the hotel. And it started when I was 12, and I just followed my dad to work, and I wouldn't leave. And so he would stick me around where he wanted to get rid of me for a little while so he could do his work. But I loved painting, and I loved being a concierge, and I loved accounting, and it just is a wonderful business because it really does have so much to offer.
People look at you from the outside and they see this successful couple, successful business. A hotel sounds glamorous. There are movies about it. I bet it's a hard business.
Yeah, it is. We're very fortunate. Our father was a very gutsy guy and took a chance, and he was 72 to build that property. And we always tell the story that the Georgia Straight at the time ran a headline that said the blunder on Burrard, because he was building the hotel so far outside the city center it would never work.
So what's the secret sauce for being a successful entrepreneur?
I think hard work. Honestly, I think that people are always looking for, the big secret, the big answer. I just think it's a lot of hard work. I think we were both taught that from our parents and our families. And my dad would always say to me, you can do anything that you want. If you really want to do it, you just have to stick with it and work like a dog.
It was tough. And I think Wendy's right. An entrepreneur, there's this misconception, I think this may be perpetuated by shows like the Dragons, where you think, oh yeah, all I gotta do is go in with a good idea and wow, someone will give me money and it'll be so easy. That's not our experience. I mean, we've started several businesses in our time, and every single one of them required a lot of work and a lot of dedication and many, many long hours.
And sticking with it. I mean, we all hear about, this financial surprise or a government policy surprise, and you have to adjust.
We never imagined COVID would hit us. No. And so that was a really interesting part of history for sure, a real learning experience, and to be prepared for the unknown.
What did you do? Did you have to close?
No.
We decided not to.
Well, we house a lot of the transplant patients from St. Paul's that stay with us long term in order to access care, and from the north and other places in the province. And so we felt we had a duty to stay open. So at one point it was me, 2 staff, and 6 hotel guests. It was an interesting place.
And you survived.
We did, barely, but yeah.
And the problems come at you from all directions. Wendy, I can remember once running this hotel, and all of a sudden you find out that the city's decided to limit access of a road that goes into your hotel.
Yes.
Good example.
Yes, without question. There's so many unknowns that come at you, and I think that's one of the things about being an entrepreneur is you have to be incredibly flexible and patient. I think sometimes that's pretty hard, being patient with yourself, but you also do have to love what you do.
Well, they are often surprises, and you're right. It's very, very difficult sometimes to respond to them. I love your example of a change of road. We've got a beautiful bike path next to us that everybody thinks is another lane, so they always drive down it as well. And now we've got one-ways all around us. And we point out all the time that between 3 and 7 p.m. or 7 till 9 a.m. and stuff, no one can access our hotel.
Yeah.
Luckily, we have loyal clientele, so they figure out how the back alleys and all the rest of it work. But you can't get to us, and it's not just us. It's a lot of the West End. That the city is growing, trying to understand how to deal with it. And, our biggest issue right now, though, as you know, Carol, is what's going on downtown with safety and security, and even on the corner right where we are and on Comox Street itself, it's horrific what's become downtown, what the type of crime.
So you're seeing it in your location?
I had a guy lighting a crack pipe right outside our front entrance in our breezeway while families are getting on a bus. It's like, come on.
But we really feel bad for these people because they need help, and it's a complex issue of help amongst many different types of variations for mental health.
And the concern is whether we're not helping them, but we're also creating an environment that speaks to a different kind of Vancouver than what we had during other times, and it needs to be addressed. It's a desperate problem.
You've adjusted in so many ways to the things that are thrown at you and expanded your business, changed it according to what's out there, and you started a huge spa business, for instance. How many spas at the peak did you have?
So when we owned the spas, we had 10 spas and an international spa product distribution company where we would supply spa products to our competitors and to other spas around the world and retail outlets as well. And it was an extension, I think, from the hotel business as a health and wellness aspect that we fell in love with that. Well, I fell in love with that business, so then I said, you love it too. But I actually, we started the spas because I really wanted to have something of my own, as the hotel was my father's. He created it. He was just an amazing entrepreneur, and I really wanted us to have something that we stamped our name on. And so the bank lease became available in the spa, in the hotel, and we said, okay, let's try a spa in there. And there were really no proper day spas in Vancouver 20 years ago.
And then someone knocked on your door or knocked on LinkedIn and said, we'd like to buy it.
Yeah, the spas were actually not for sale, but I received a message on LinkedIn, not even somebody that I was friends with on LinkedIn, and a connection. And it was just the right time for us to make a change. We were coming up to the 20th anniversary of the spas, and we're wanting to dedicate our time and our resources to our family, and then also to our charity work.
I think we talked a lot about the fact that maybe we'd done everything that we wanted to, or as much as we were dedicated to doing in the spa industry, and maybe it was time for us to move.
Are you speaking for yourself now?
Yes, I guess I am.
I don't know if I'm quite done, but I think I'm done.
Yeah, I hope you do.
But you might be done with me.
I like pedicures.
It's wonderful seeing your interaction, because people would say, oh my gosh, how do you work beside each other day after day, year after year for so long? Like, you make it look easy, but is it easy?
No, I think that we naturally have different strong skill sets, although you're quite good at everything, but you're welcome. But I do think that we have great respect for one another, and I think that that's the core for our marriage and our business relationship as well, because if something is really important to me, then I'll say to you, I need to do this, and you'll say, okay.
I think Wendy and I, we committed to one another at the beginning. We understood that commitment was going to take the same kind of work that it takes to be an entrepreneur, and focused on doing that, have stayed true to that. And even though we have our crosses to bear, like everyone, I mean, we always consider that ours aren't that heavy, and we manage.
So as successful entrepreneurs, when a group or individuals or a couple turn to philanthropy, there's very often a personal connection, and you have turned to autism, as you mentioned a couple of times. What was your reason?
Well, when we met, we actually were already doing a lot of work with Variety Club, and that came from our families and always a need to give back, wanting to volunteer and so forth. So it was really in our blood. But 25 years ago, our son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum and is profoundly affected. And when he was 8 years old and in school, we had tried a few different schools, public and independent, and there was really nowhere for him to go.
I remember a long time ago, 2008, we talked about this, and you had this idea of building a center such as this, which is not just for the individuals, but the families need support as well. Sergio, can you believe that it actually came to be?
Well, sometimes I pinch myself, yes. But you're right. I think what makes PFN different than other opportunities around autism, we have endeavored to be family focused and lifespan focused. So we understood the needs of individuals, whether they're autistic individuals or their families and caretakers, that for many, this is a lifelong search for supports and programming. And so we've endeavored to create something here that does that.
So what was the journey like, Wendy?
It was tough because with the schools, we weren't sort of able to get that going. And actually, Premier Campbell said, well, you'll just have to go to the Autism Center and see what they can do for you. And I said, what autism center? And he said, well, isn't there an autism center in BC? And I said, no. And he says, well, there's a BC Cancer Center. And so that's sort of what started this journey. And so we tried really hard to include all different types of groups and individuals in the community and put it out there and saying, if you could build a dream autism center, what would there be in it? And that really was the start of some great work, but also some big challenges in collaboration.
I think, Wendy touched on something really important there. And it's interesting because that was 2008 that we started that discussion. And we really did struggle to get our own community on board. There's a lot of rivalry amongst organizations, in charities in special needs and autism. There are different philosophical bents that end up playing a big role in how you have these conversations. And as difficult as the fight was in 2008, I presently serve on a committee to create a national autism network, and it's equally as difficult today at the national level. So it's the same arguments, the same fights, the same perspectives that give us a bit of a start every time.
So I think we did take a very entrepreneurial approach to it as volunteers, as parents, and thought, okay, we've tried our best to make everybody happy. I thought it was going to be a lot easier for everybody to join hands and sing Kumbaya. But as Serge says, it's a very competitive industry.
And a very broad spectrum.
And a broad spectrum, for sure. And we were very interested in helping people not only with autism. To us, the diagnosis didn't matter whatsoever. It's neurodiversity, and you don't even have to have a diagnosis. It's whatever the challenge is the challenge. Epilepsy is the challenge. Learning disabilities is the challenge. Reading is the challenge behaviorally. And also in autism and neurodiversity, those that require more supports, those that are more profoundly affected and have a lot of different comorbidities are challenging to help and to serve. It's not easy. And I think it's why also, families struggle so much, and the divorce rate is very high anecdotally amongst families that have a child with autism. It's tough on the siblings, it's tough on the families.
It is amazing to me that they manage, that they through that struggle, they're able to keep brave and move forward for those children and stuff. They're heroes.
There's so many things that we take for granted that you don't realize for an individual with autism, wherever they are in the spectrum, it's not so easy. And I remember you talking about, well, think about taking a flight. And you have to go through security. Well, if all of a sudden you're told, take off your shoes, take off your jacket, walk through there alone, how do you do that?
Yeah. Give us your phone, and your phone might be your way of communication.
Yeah.
Would you ask me to give up, my white cane if I was blind? It's trying to get people, and that's what it's about. A lot of the work that Wendy does is around awareness, is making organizations like YVR and the staff that they have, making them aware of the challenges that some in our community face and making the experience better.
The spectrum is so vast. So the airport is a great example about meaningful inclusion. It's just that we have some self-advocates that would class themselves as having Asperger's. They don't need a lot of support. But then there's those people on the other end of the spectrum that do require a lot of supports, are nonverbal. For example, as Sergio was mentioning, our son talks. He's nonverbal. He talks with his phone with a voice output app. And those steps along the airport journey are equally difficult for him and for the family. So meaningful inclusion is the core of what we do for our charity, and YVR and Tamara Vrooman with her leadership at YVR is just my absolute dream, because with the meaningful inclusion that she's leading the way with all of the different team members at YVR and all of the different first responders at YVR, it sounds really great. I thought, let's train everybody at YVR. And Tamara says, that sounds great. And then when we dive into it, it's actually much more difficult, but we are doing it. And not only is that going to change the world from this aspect on families and individuals going to be not only traveling easier throughout YVR, but also being welcomed. Tamara's words, they should feel welcomed. I can't imagine an airport welcoming our family with autism. Can you imagine that?
No, it's absolutely. I've got to share one of my favorite things. There's a new coffee shop there called the Paper Planes Cafe, and it's a training opportunity partnered between us and YVR. We will be hosting a program called Go Group, which is goal-oriented employment. So we're going to take young people who have an interest in being baristas or working in aspects of food and beverage or service, train them on short-term periods at that coffee shop, and then help them using a staffing person to access jobs in the airport.
What do you do about the specifics that we've talked about, like going through security?
So it's such a great segue into this, Carol, because we spend our lives, and families spend their lives with their loved ones with autism or different neurodiversities, training them how to adapt to the world. Now we feel that it's time for the world to adapt to them. However, the great news is that the accommodations are very easy and fast to do. So it can be things like, for example, time and space. So if I see that our son would be having trouble in a lineup, I would say to the security guard, is it okay with you, please, if that big section over there, that I stand over there with my son and just wait until my husband and my daughter are at the front of the lineup there? And
it's also maybe sometimes about letting people see what that autism looks like. Like you see the kid flicking his hand, staring off on the side, you think, oh my God, what's going on there and stuff. Just understand, it's no big deal. They're stimming, and stimming's a normal part for many kids. It's nothing you should be scared of. They're not weird or strange. They're just, they have this behavior that we should be patient with. I mean, we all have behaviors that are somewhat odd if you think about it. And we're tolerant of everybody else. We should be tolerant of them as well.
And so we come to the center, and before I ask you to describe what you do here, I remember a woman saying, it's the only place that she can come and be relaxed, because even if her child acts out or is having troubles, she doesn't have to go around apologizing to everyone. Everybody understands. And so she lets her guard down. What do you hope the center does?
Well, for families, I believe we got that one. And I think it does that. We have a Christmas party every year. We have 600 to 800 families show up with their kids because it's the only Christmas that they get. That's the only time their kids can visit Santa. So I think we're doing a good job of engaging those families and letting them feel like they fit, that this is a home for them.
Is there a research component?
We're undergoing right now a study as a result of several stories that have happened in the press. We got involved with the Knights of St. John looking at end of life, dying with dignity for individuals with autism. Because the big thing is, as you know, the incidence rates have really increased. Well, that means for the first time, we're having 60, 70, 80-year-old people with autism that may be profoundly impacted living through. So now housing is a much bigger issue than it was. Employment is a much bigger issue. Death and dying is a big issue. I mean, we had two terrible instances in this province in the last year where individuals who unfortunately were at end of life were not treated with dignity in their dying because we don't have processes in place to understand their needs. That's in British Columbia, that shouldn't happen.
A physician once said to me 25 years ago, families need a phone number, a website, a place to start. And that's one of the things that we're trying to achieve, is that families, I say figuratively, don't feel dropped, that there is somewhere for them, and not somewhere physically, because we're very cognizant of the fact that it's not how many families can get to the centre in Richmond or to other spokes throughout the province. Is if you have a loved one with autism or neurodiversity, often a 10-minute drive is too much. Sometimes car rides are not easy. Getting out of the house is not easy. So it was really important to us that we centralized the information and support and services and everything in one spot, and then disseminate it out.
I'm just knowing she's more Italian than I am. She's got the hands going all the time. I'm sitting here. That's pretty good.
I'm really passionate about, if people can't get to the center, that there still is help for them. And we've got so much more to do.
You both have lived this, of course, as parents and as a family. How have you coped?
Sometimes not well.
It's hard. It really is hard, is that, if your son or daughter are not doing well, it's trial and error, because people don't have answers. Doctors don't necessarily have answers. Behaviorists don't have answers. Psychologists there's still a lot of things that there are not answers for.
Yeah. And our son is the most beautiful, wonderful kid in the world.
Yeah.
He is fantastic. Hands down, one of my favorite people. He and I cook dinner every night and love doing it and stuff. He's a wonderful, wonderful kid who has these challenges through no fault of his own. He did nothing to deserve any of this and stuff. And yet he gets up every day with a smile on his face and tries to find a way to enjoy himself. We're very lucky that he's able to get out and enjoy the community, which he really does, every aspect of it. And we're very fortunate for the people that grace his life.
You've accomplished so much and are accomplishing so much. Knowing you both, I can't imagine you're going to sit still. And so therefore, are you still hotel operators and doing philanthropy here? What's the balance going forward if you were looking out 5 years?
Well, I think we always do, we do a lot of that philanthropy, just because we've been graced with the opportunity to work with a lot of politicians, a lot of police chiefs and first responders, with leaders like Tamara Vrooman and YVR, and they become big projects. At the same time, we need to keep our day job and keep things running, keep paying the bills.
Will you stay in the hotel business?
I think, we have a product there, a factory that's 50 years old. It's reaching the end of its life. And as Vancouver looks to expand its housing and different opportunities, we're uniquely located next to St. Paul's, which is also an area that'll be under construction. So we've been looking at the opportunity to redevelop our site for several years now.
Your hope for the future, Wendy?
I think it's really time for people with neurodiversity and developmental disabilities to be accepted and welcomed more often in the community.
Welcomed.
Yeah.
Important word. Thank you both.
Oh, pleasure.
Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that this has become their mission. Wendy Lisogar-Cocchia, Sergio Cocchia, BC Legends.